All right, it looks like we're at the top of the hour. Welcome everyone to the Reload 5 official release webinar and training. We're really excited that all of you can be here, and we're especially excited for this latest release of Reload. We, of course, today are joined by Tay Kratzer, the developer of Reload, and he's going to be walking us through this latest release and the new features and some of the great functionality that this backup and disaster recovery solution has for all of you. My name is Q Mangus. I'm the Director of Product Marketing. I will be hosting the event today and fielding questions and being your moderator as well. A few things to just take note of as we begin. This session is going to be recorded, so just look for the recording link here shortly, and it will also be posted on our YouTube page, and I encourage you to go out there and check that out. It's youtube.com/GWAVA-TV. There's a lot of great resources there of previous recorded webinars and other videos that we have. Also, just to take note, we will have time for a Q&A session. So if you have questions as we're going through the presentation and through the demo, please feel free to put those through in the chat or the Q&A. And there's tabs there on the right side of the WebEx UI where you can put those in. And if you put those through, we'll be sure to field those to Tay and then get your questions answered. So we're going to go ahead and turn the rest of the time over to Tay and let him show us Reload 5.
Well, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. And I want to make sure that we discuss everything that we possibly can. This is largely a training for those of you who already have Reload, but I still want to address a little bit of the core of what Reload is, so that those who don't have Reload can kind of understand the value that it offers before I take off into all the new features of Reload 5. The thing that I want to show you here is that Reload, so I'm just looking at the interface for Reload server. This is the post office that I'm on. I'm on a post office called Beg2PO, okay? And my post office is actually in Montreal, Canada, although I sit in Orem, Utah at the support center for GWAVA. And now this post office is being backed up on this server, which is in Montreal, Canada, okay, and with this profile, okay? And so if ever I wanted to access a backup, it's really easy to access a backup. I can go here and choose a backup that I'd like to access and click on Turn on Access to that particular backup, okay? And it's simple enough. Literally all that I'll have to do is then to log into that backup. There's two ways of getting into the backup. I can connect to what's called the access mode POA, or I can use what's called the restore area. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull over my GroupWise client. The fonts are kind of squinty here now because of this sharing tool, so I apologize for that. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the rocker bar here, and I'm going to go into backup. And what I'm going to see is what's in the backup that's not in my live mailbox, okay? And then what's really slick is I can right mouse click an item, and I can restore that item. Oh, gee, that I know exactly why that is that I got that error. The D107 error happens because I just flipped the backup from the most current backup to a backup from November, and so I kind of pulled the rug out from under myself by doing that. So I'm going to just see here if I can demonstrate for you getting an item back. Okay. I'm gonna leave that be, but many of you have used this feature. You know how it works, and basically what's happening is my GroupWise client has access to the backup that's over on the Reload server vis-a-vis the GroupWise POA. The GroupWise POA that I'm connected to, the live GroupWise POA that I'm connected to, my live system has an NFS client mount over to the Reload server. And because it has that, when my client says, hey, I'm doing a file open backup, and the restore area is over on some Linux path, my client goes, I don't know how to get there. And so he dials up the POA and says, hey, POA, I'm trying to access this backup that's at some Linux path. I can't get there. Can you get there? And the POA says, sure, I can get there. And then what I'm presented with is I'm presented only with the items that aren't in my live mailbox. Okay, and so that's why when I did a backup, I only saw one item because I'm only presented with the items that aren't in my mailbox. Another really powerful feature is Reload is beautifully integrated with GroupWise in such a manner that you can't delete an item until the item's backed up by Reload. So let me just show that to you here. Notice I've got 363 trash items, okay? And let's take a recent message that I got right here from someone, or let's do this one from Adobe Systems. I'm going to do a right mouse click, delete and empty. Now again, remember my trash items are at 363, okay? I'm going to say delete and empty. And you'll notice here that my trash items are at 364, even though I said get rid of that item. And it goes away from my display. That's a function of the GroupWise client. Goes away from my display, but still that item won't go away. Why? Because it hasn't been backed up by Reload. So that's an API made by Novell years ago called Smart Purge, and GroupWise uniquely integrates with that. So your backups now are easily available. There's a couple different ways to access a backup. There's the File Open Backup feature, but also what you can do is you can have a user get out of their client and they can connect to the Reload server. So I'm just going to attempt that, and I think they've got this open in the firewall, and so I should have checked that out, but give me just a moment here. I'm going to go in here and fire up my GroupWise client. Here we go. And I'm going to say, oh, wrong dialog. Okay, just a moment here. Okay, so I'm going to say cancel, and then I'm going to say reload2.guava.com. Okay, I'm going to enter my password. And again, I think haven't used this method for a long time, but okay, it's still working. They've got the firewall open on that server to 1677. So you'll remember that when I selected the backup that I selected was from Wednesday, November 25th. So I basically jumped in my time machine back to the 25th. So what you're going to observe here is this is the state of my mailbox from that backup from the 25th. So you're not going to see items beyond that. Of course, you've got appointments that are there. And then if I wanted to take an item and I wanted to move that over to my live mailbox, all I'd have to do is right mouse click, archive. That item gets put into my archive. I go ahead and get out of my GroupWise client, and I point it back at my live, so beg2.guava.com. That's the name of that's the DNS name for my post office. And so now I'm going back into my client. Did I type in something wrong here? I apologize. I must have. Okay, beg1. Yeah, my post office is called beg2po, but for some reason the DNS name is beg1.guava.com. Okay. Anyway, so now I go in and I can go into my archive. All right, and you see the item that I archived from the 25th, and I can do a right mouse click, archive, which then of course just unarchives the item into my mailbox. And it's this powerful feature because not only can you archive messages, but let's say that an address book was mangled or damaged or deleted or whatever it be. You can go back into vis-a-vis the access mode POA, and you can take and you can export that off and then import it into the mailbox. I don't want to get too much into that, but it's rather easy. Those of you that have experience with that, it's rather easy. Okay, so backups then so we've reviewed that Reload is an actual backup solution in which you're guaranteed that everything gets backed up. Okay, a lot of other backup solutions, they're just a snapshot in time. You have no guarantee that you got everything into the backup. And so that's an important feature. Quick restore, okay? So you saw how easily we could access a backup. We just went into a web-based menu, selected the backup we wanted, and then we could go into the client and get the item that we wanted rather easily, okay? But reload backups, there's more to it. They're very, very fast, the way that Reload backs up the post office. And so you find that your backup speeds, let's just see here, all right, yeah, okay, so, for some reason that time for the most recent backup's unavailable, but the average completion time is 5 minutes and 37 seconds. The reason it's probably unavailable, just, this is a server that I do a lot of testing with, so I'm constantly monkeying with stuff. So I have a tendency to cause problems for things. But anyways, this backup, goes rather quickly. It's getting an NFS mount, backing up a post office that's probably 20 gigabytes in size in 5 minutes or so, right? So very, very quick backup solution. Okay, now the other really powerful feature. And just you've given access to a backup. It's very easy to turn off access to a backup by just simply clicking on this button, and within a minute or so time, you'll see this little green arrow go away, and then poof, access to the backup is gone. What's also very important, and I didn't demonstrate this to you, but because of the Smart Purge API, when you give users access to the backup, they still can't delete the items from the backup because of the Smart Purge API, because I use that same API. I point it at the backup when the backup is completed, and I say, oh, gee, nothing's been backed up. Again, this is the data on the Reload server, and so I'm basically telling GroupWise, oh, nothing's been backed up, and then GroupWise knows nothing can be deleted from that message store. So over on the live GroupWise system, the timestamp is advanced. On the Reload server, the timestamp is frozen in a sense, or it's cleared out, so that users can't delete items from the backup. So your backup truly is a backup, even when you give users access to the backup. Very powerful. Okay, so the other really powerful feature of Reload is the idea of push-button disaster recovery. So all that you need to do is simply push the button, the ambulance button, and when you do that, these sequence of events happen rather immediately. The profiles change to disaster recovery mode. Backups are disabled, obviously, because your live system is down, and so thus you've switched over here. No reason for it to go out and try and get a backup. It makes sure there's not going to be any port conflicts. And then it loads what's called the Disaster Recovery POA. That's just a POA that you can put in settings and so forth, and it uses those settings. And so these are the settings that we indicated. Okay, and so now we have a fully functioning GroupWise POA loaded against the most current backup, okay? And so literally all that I'd have to do, like in our scenario, remember my DNS name for my post office is beg1.guava.com. So literally all I'd have to do is just switch the A record. I'm not going to do it right now, but switch the A record from where it's currently pointing to the IP address on the Reload server. Okay, so super powerful feature, and of course we have disaster recovery for domains also. Okay, okay, so that's a general overview of the main points and value for those of you who aren't familiar with Reload. That's really why I went through that. Now, now I want to go ahead and talk about the new features of Reload 5, okay? So first off, and so we're going to talk about them, and then we're going to do a little bit of demonstration on how to do some of these things. Probably the most exciting feature is the collector server model of Reload 5, but I'm going to actually save that for last. That's going to be about the last 20 minutes of our call, maybe half an hour if I get through this fast enough, so that I can give you really proper training on it. But I want to review all the other features before we get into the real brainiac kind of stuff with the collector. One of the really exciting features that you're going to find in Reload 5 is that your disk space is going to decrease, the amount of disk space being used, because portable backups go away. So it's not that your portable backups just immediately get deleted, but they will get deleted over a series of backups that goes on. It'll just chew away at those portable backups, and then poof, the portable backups will go away, and there's no longer those portable backups. For those of you familiar with it, the portable backup basically took a lot of disk space. Okay, it was an entire copy of the blobs directory. Each week generally is how often it would run, and it was a very expensive, not only on disk but a CPU processing kind of routine. Well, I came up with a completely different method, of taking care of the issue that the portable was trying to accomplish, namely the idea that your blobs have to expire. In other words, when backups roll off and there's blobs that are no longer referenced in the backups and obviously in the live system, there's no reason to keep them around, and so there has to be a routine to clean those up, and so that's what that's what portable backups sought to resolve, and that's gone away. It's now called a weekly maintenance job, and it does, it still has to run, but I'll just quickly show this to you here. See the weekly maintenance job, okay? This routine still runs, but far less expensive. It takes 0 more disk space, okay? And so you're not going to see this massive disk space increase when a maintenance job goes on, but also it's quite a bit less CPU processing and so forth. And so it's very, very nice for those of you, particularly that are in virtual environments that aren't using bare metal servers. It's very, very helpful. And again, you get that disk space. And I've seen so many customers have been kind of on the edge of their disk space, and so this is going to be a welcome relief. Okay. Now, another thing that I want to show you here real quick, you notice here, so I've upgraded my server to Reload 5. Technically, it's 5.02. Okay, is the release, and so those of you that might have 5, I'd recommend that you get to 5.02 because there's some great new features that we added, and you'll see that here in just a moment. But anyways, you're going to, when you upgrade, what it does is it says, okay, you've got a Reload 4 license. I'll give you a 30-day grace period. Okay. So, and then after that 30-day grace period, you need to get your Reload 5 license in place. Now, just it's exactly the same. You don't have to have any communications with the licensing department. It's the exact same key that you had for 4 when you downloaded your Reload 4 license. If you don't happen to have that key, you can call support. We've got it available to us, and or you can contact licensing too, but it might be a little faster to call support. So anyways, all that I need to do then is click on that button, takes me to licenses.guava.com, and I can go ahead and download the license. I've already done that, so I'm just going to go ahead and go to the licensing tab here. I'm going to choose File, and then RL, okay, there's my PEM file, and I'm going to say Open, Submit, okay, and the daemon restarts, it consumes the new license, and everything, this little big yellow button goes away. After 30 days, it turns into a red button, and backups stop working and so forth. All your functionality stops. But we're going to go ahead. You can see that it logged out, and the big yellow button's gone away, and we're using a Reload 5 license. Okay, so very simple to license yourself for Reload 5. You don't even have to contact the licensing division. You can just contact support, and we'd encourage you to do that rather than thousands of customers contacting licensing over this next couple months and so forth. Okay, so we've talked about then and the upgrade process, of course. So on your existing Reload 4 servers, you just go to Upgrade, and the interface is going to look exactly the same way, and you just say Upgrade Now. Now, if you have troubles with that, there's documentation, because sometimes people don't have HTTP access available to their Reload servers, and so they can download it manually, put it in the right directory, and you can do an upgrade rather easily. Okay, so So now we've talked about portable backups, how those have gone away. Let's talk about tape backup enhancements. For those of you who are using tape backups, what's really slick is we let me show this to you here. Okay. So here we go. We have this new feature called tar split. Okay, tar split zip. Split and zip, there we go. So basically, here's the idea. We've had customers who have post offices that are well over a terabyte in size, and so the tar file that would be presented would be well over a terabyte in size, and that can get kind of ungangly for people. And so we added this ability to split the tar into zip files, okay, and you can then indicate in size in gigabytes, how big you want that to be. This is obviously way too small. I might, but my post office is pretty small, so I was just kind of doing testing using that. But you probably want to put in like 100 gigabytes or something like that if you have a larger system, and it splits them amongst the tars. But it splits the tar amongst these tar.gz files. And what's really cool is there's a little script that's dumped into each of the day directories. And so if you want to build a particular day, you just run this. It's called build, build.sh. You run the build.sh script, and it builds that particular day. So you just build that day. You build the blobs. That's in a completely different directory, and I really don't have the time to show it to you, but you'll see it when you see where the data goes. You just run the build commands, and you can build just a particular day. And so it's different than the extraction of a tar, which would have to take all of that space. You can just extract, just the days that you want, and it's going to use a little bit less disk space. So that's kind of a slick feature. But the primary reason that we made this was for people not having a big ungangly tar file. Okay, so great feature for those of you with tar backups. Okay, okay. Now, so here's some other really cool things. Okay, if you go into a profile, go to backups. Okay, we've got some new features here. Okay, you ever had a situation where let's say you're keeping 10 backups, okay, on the reload server. That's the amount of disk space that you have allocated and stuff. You can only keep about 10 backups. Let's say a person goes on vacation for a week. They come back, and they're like, "Oh shoot! A couple days before I went on vacation, I deleted some items. We need to get them back." And you're like, "Oh man, I got like 10 projects on my plate today. I don't have the time to be fiddling with this and so forth. Gee, that backup's about to roll off tonight or tomorrow. Gee, it'd be nice if I could freeze it." Okay, all right. So in fact you can. Okay, so let's just go back to here, for example, and you can see there's some that I've already frozen. But anyways, I'll highlight this. So let's just remember that Sunday, November 29th. Okay. In fact, let's do a little bit. Let's do like an actual day that they would have been here, right? So let's say Thursday, November 26th. All right. And so I'm going to say freeze that backup. Okay. All right. And so basically what that does is that backup, even though you've indicated to keep just X amount of backups, whatever you chose. Let's say in our scenario 10 backups, that backup will be frozen, and it won't count against the 10. Okay, so you can keep continue to keep 10, but more particularly it stays around, and it stays around really forever, for as long as you want. And so I'm going to go back over to here to backups, and I'm just going to see here. Okay, remember it was Thursday, November 26th. Okay, see how it's got an _F next to it? That represents a frozen backup, okay, just as it says here in the documentation, the inline documentation, okay. And the way to unfreeze a backup, or as one of my colleagues here says, to let it go, that's a reference to the movie Frozen. Anyways, the way to let that go is you can just unfreeze it, okay, and then poof, within a couple minutes time, you'll see that item that backup not having an _F next to it, and it's unfrozen. Okay, but what's also cool now, another scenario that we're using that for is we've got a customer here recently that bought Reload and Retain. They've about 27,000 users, and they're in the midst of they had their GroupWise 8 system on some pretty rickety servers, and now they're upgrading to GroupWise 2014 and putting it on new servers and stuff. And Reload's a really big part of that, but they also need to dredge. With Retain, they need to dredge from the data, and they'd rather do it from the Reload server, which is a good idea. So what we've done is we've gone in and we've frozen a backup that we want to use, and their dredging process we calculate will take several weeks. And so that way that backup just stays around, and we've loaded the access mode POA against it, and they can just sit there and dredge with Retain vis-a-vis the POA that's running against that backup that we've frozen. Okay, so that's a super powerful feature. So there's multiple applications to it, but I think you'll really enjoy that feature. Another feature is the ability to delete a backup. And now, just if you go to delete a backup that's frozen, you can't. Okay, it won't let you, so that's kind of nice. But let's say that you've got, this is super handy for, let's say you froze a backup and you've been using it for quite a while, and then you're like, okay, I just want to get that to go away. You can just delete it there, and it'll go away, or it'll go away with the normal deletion cycles. But just some people like to be able to do that. And then, but also, let's say you're just, you got Reload 5, and you're like, oh wow, great. You know what? I can increase the number of backups I can keep, because of less disk space and so forth. I'm going to try and do 20 backups or something like that. And then you get your 20 backups, and you just got over the edge of your disk space, and you're in the red zone in the sense that Reload won't do any backups any longer. And so you're like, you know what? I need to decrease that just a little bit. I'm going to put it down to 15 days, but I got to chew off some of these backups. You can just go here, highlight a backup, and say delete backup now. Okay, so super powerful feature, and I'm sure that we'll really enjoy that here in support too. That saves us the work of deleting those manually out of the directories and so forth. So that's a great feature that you'll enjoy. Also, the documentation inside of Reload, I'm really into this inline documentation, in particular when you go into configure features. Okay, we've updated all of this and really tried to give people a really good understanding of what these features are. And a lot of times it'll even say, a factory default, okay? Because sometimes people are like, well, I've got these threads at, this, but what's the factory default, And so I've tried to indicate what the factory default is for several of these features. So we've updated that. Another key thing is Reload 5 works with GroupWise 2014 R2. In fact, Novell several months ago said, hey, we got to make sure Reload works with R2. Why? Well, they back up their system with Reload, and so it was very important to them. But obviously, they know that we've got lots of customers that use Reload too, and so it works all the way up to 2014 R2, which is really exciting. And that's really an exciting piece of software from Novell too. So we're glad to see that come about. And I think I'm looking over a paper here. I think I've covered just about everything prior to what's called the collector. Okay, there's one last thing that I need to mention, and part of the reason that it's good that you upgrade to Reload 5 is there will soon be a product called Reload for Retain, and Reload for Retain will back up. The collector is what it's called, or it's called an agent. Actually, the agent will run. Typically will run on your Retain server, or if your Retain server is on Windows, then it'll just run on the Reload server. And it can back up your Retain system over to a Reload server. Super powerful feature. We don't have the time to talk about it today, nor do we have the it all put together. But it's a super exciting feature. But you do have to have Reload 5 to be the receiver of the data. Okay, we've now talked about everything that I wanted to prior to what's called collectors, and we're at exactly about half an hour to go, so this is excellent. I think we need about that much time. So first off, let me tell you what the collector was born of, why this idea came about. We here at GWAVA, we have a cloud. We have tons of customers in our cloud. We even have a few customers that their GroupWise systems are fully hosted in our cloud. But more particularly, we have their reload getting backed up to the cloud, retain in the cloud, and so forth. And what we needed to do was to be able to move data efficiently, and because now we were over this, a WAN link. A customer could be, states away from us, right? And we needed to replicate their data over to our data center, and in an efficient manner. Now, let's just give you a scenario. Let's say you have a post office that's like 100 gigs in size. Generally, you're going to find about 90 gigs is in blobs, or the OF files directory. Okay, I refer to it as blobs, but in the OF files directory, there's about 90% of the data, and about 10% of the data is interspersed amongst the OF user and OF MSG directories, specifically the OF user directory, the OF user index directory, and the OF MSG directory. Okay, and so when reload outside of the collector model, so just using your typical, getting an NFS or a Samba or a NCP connection to your live post office, the way that it gets the data is it would have to, if you had a 100 gig post office, there's about 10 gigs in OF user and OF MSG, et cetera. It would have to copy over about 10 gigabytes a night, and a little bit of the new blobs, okay, but we'll just say about 10 gigabytes just to make it easy. So you'd have to copy over that 10 gigabytes a night, and there was no way around that, because the way GroupWise works is it's actually extremely efficient. You've got your databases; those are changing constantly, okay, and then you have your blobs, and your blobs really, your OF files directory, isn't really changing all that much. I mean, it is and it isn't. It is in the sense that there's lots of files being added and lots of files being deleted. But if you take it as a whole, if you take the content as a whole, the size, there's not a whole lot of change there, okay? And so you certainly have to get the changes, but the amount of data that has to come across is rather minimal compared to the fact that you have to take the entire contents of those databases in OF user and OF MSG and index and so forth. You have to take those entire contents and you have to transfer that 10 gigs a night. Okay. Now we have 100 gig post office. That's small peanuts. Okay, for a lot of our customers. I have customers who very small shops even that they can have post offices that are several hundred gigs. And then there's some larger customers that have post offices that are into terabytes. Well, okay, I haven't had anybody beyond 2 terabytes, but anyways, beyond a terabyte. Okay, and so getting all that data, when you think about it, if we had a terabyte post office, we might have to be transferring, I don't know, about 100 gigs worth of data. Okay, and that's not off. I was just working, this outfit I was talking about with 27,000 users. Those 27,000 users are actually spread amongst only 8 post offices. So one of their post offices, for example, the databases and so forth are about 65 gigabytes or so that are having to be transferred every night. Okay, so anyways, that takes a long time to transfer all that data. Okay, and more particularly, what's difficult is if you have to transfer that data over a wide area network or across the internet to the cloud. Okay, and so we had to try and solve that problem. Okay, and so here's how we do it. Okay, what happens is there's now this new model where you can continue to use the same model that you did all along. And in fact, this particular profile here, okay, when I look at it, this is just an NFS Linux server that it's getting connected to. It gets an NFS connection to it, and just your traditional backup. So when you install Reload 5, it's not like everything changes. Everything stays exactly the same. You just have the ability to set up this kind of an architecture to have a collector. But anyways, so this. And I kind of lost my train of thought. This gets an NFS connection to the post office, okay? And, okay, yeah, now I know where I'm going. I apologize. So now what I can do is let's say I go, you know what, this is now, in this scenario, quite frankly, I probably wouldn't recommend a collector. I wouldn't recommend a collector simply to speed up backups, because look how long the backup's taking. It's less than 6 minutes. It's really not going to, a collector is not going to provide any particular value here. But if my post office were bigger, I would just simply go here. You can take an existing profile, okay, and you can go to the Configure tab, go to Post Office and POA settings, and oops, I'd already turned that on. But anyways, basically this would be disabled by default, okay, all right, and then you just say Allow Paired Collector, okay, all right. Now, what that does is it does a sequence of events. What it does is it tells this profile, hey, if someone comes along and they pair with you, a collector, and we haven't set up a collector yet, but if someone comes along and pairs with you, allow that, okay? And if you do become paired with a collector, we now call it a paired server, okay? If you become paired with a collector, then no longer is your post office connection type a Linux server. Okay, it's like this. I'm going to go here. This is a paired server, and if I go here, you'll notice the live post office connection type is a paired collector. In other words, there's a collector that's collecting data over on the GroupWise server, okay, and then it transmits it over to the Reload server, okay? Here's how it does it. Let me just explain this to you. What happens is, okay, so let's come back over here. So we set enabled. Now what that did is it went out to the post office directory. Okay, let me just show this to you here. So your post office path, here we go. It went out to the post office directory and it made a directory called collect right off of it, okay? And in there you're going to find a file called reload_collector.rpm. You just install it. Okay, RPM -I space reload_collector.rpm. Okay, and you install the software. Great. And then you just type in reload, and it looks exactly like the reload interface. Everything really, it's the same code set. It's just a different function. Okay, and so then what you do is you go into the reload interface and you create a collector. Okay, I probably should just go ahead and demonstrate that here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here, and this isn't a perfect example because in actuality, okay, there's a couple different ways to create collectors. You can create a collector that's sitting right on your post office or your domain, or you can actually create a collector right on the Reload server. And you might go, well, why would I do that? Well, let me tell you a couple, and that's exactly the architecture I've done here. Let me just show this to you here. This is my post office, and my post office is being backed up vis-a-vis a traditional Reload backup, NFS mount, gets the DB copies the data over, and so forth. Okay, but this is called a collector, and what's interesting is these two are actually linked to each other. Okay, so here's the process. Okay, when a backup goes on, and in fact, I'm just going to go here, and I'm going to kick off a backup. Okay, it doesn't take too much CPU. So okay, when a backup goes on, what happens is it goes out, gets the NFS connection, gets the backup, and so forth as it traditionally does. And then when he's done, there's a new feature here under Backup Job Settings, under Advanced. He says, start a backup on a linked profile. And what's the name of the profile? Collect 1. Okay, remember collect one from the home page? So basically what happens is when he's done doing a backup, he tickles collect one, okay, and says, hey, now you do a backup. Now, collect one, let me show this to you here. It's kind of interesting. If we look at post office information under collect one, he says it's a local post office on the reload server. What's the live post office path? It's data, beg2PO, okay? You kind of recognize that name? That's where that's where this other post office, reload profile. Sorry, that's where the other reload profile, the first one, is configured to be, and then off of there is a connect current directory. This is kind of Reload 101. Every time Reload performs a backup, it makes a symbolic link to that most current backup off of the profile directory. There's a directory called connect, and then current. So what's really slick is the collector is basically picking up the most current backup from this profile, okay, and then the collector is transmitting it to wherever he transmits it to. So let me show this to you here. Here's where he actually is transmitting the data to. He's transmitting it to this server. So remember, this server reload2.guava.com is in Montreal, Canada. Okay, this server, this IP address, is an IP address in Provo, Utah. Okay, and so it's going to our data center in Provo, Utah. Then what's also cool is you can have every backup cycle, a collector can send the data to up to 3 locations. So guess what? It's sending it to yet another server. So it first sends it to a server in Provo, and then it sends it to another server that's actually housed in Montreal, Canada. That's our Reload demo server. So this Reload demo server, the way that it gets fed this backup, someone's turned on disaster recovery. We'll just turn that off here. Anyways, the way that it gets fed the backups that it has is vis-a-vis the collector on this server, pushing it over to this server. Okay, so that's kind of a cool feature. Okay, so now the data is being pushed to 2 locations. You can push your data to up to 3 locations vis-a-vis a collector, and your collector can be sitting right on your GroupWise server, or if you don't want to do that, it can be sitting on your Reload server, and it can transmit to another location, that's off-site or in a partner cloud. We've got our cloud, and there's other partners, but there's one that I'm very familiar with. I work with him quite a bit. Viable Solutions. You might look him up on the internet. And my contact there is Elliot Lloyd Lanes. He's got a ton of Reload servers and retained servers and so forth in their cloud. So they kind of take the east, we take the west. So super powerful capabilities, because now you can replicate your data off-site. Now, again, the reason you might want to put a collector on your GroupWise server is, let's say your backups are taking a long time. Let's say they're taking a couple hours because you got a lot of data. Under that situation, then that's when I would consider putting a collector right on your live server. Okay, but now the only limitation with collectors is there's only the collector only runs on Linux. Yeah, sorry, but if you're on NetWare or Windows and you still want the benefit of a collector, no problem. You just put the collector on your Reload server and you push from there in exactly the same manner that I've demonstrated here. Okay, now. What a collector also makes available is, let's say you've got a partner that you want to work with, or whatever it be, you could actually eliminate the need for a Reload server on site. You could work with your partner, and your collector would just push the data from the GroupWise server over to the Reload server. Now, what's the requirements on the GroupWise server? Very little requirements. It's basically 2 times the size of the OF user and OF MSG directory, not even the index directory, just so you know. And in fact, what's really cool is when you go to any one of your Reload profiles, and that's not a collector, it'll say, here's the disk space that's required if you had a collector. So it does all the calculation for you. So if I wanted to set up a collector over on this, live post office, right, I would have to make sure that the location where I put the collector, and again, I'm going to put it off of GWPO collect, okay, you got to make sure that at that path there's about 4 gigabytes worth of disk space, okay, and there's a little tick up on that calculation to account for growth too, just so that's how you convert an existing profile to a collector-based profile. Now, you can, when you go in and you create profiles, and you have to do so from the text menu, just as we've always had to do. When you create a profile, there's simply 2 new profile types. Let's just show that to you here. Okay, I'm going to go here. Here we go. All right, I think you can see this. I need to change the settings on this, because if I don't, it will look really ugly. And so I'm just going to go here. There we go. And I'm going to say apply. Okay, so I'm going to type in reload. And there we go. Okay, so here I'm going to create a collector. Okay, all right. And so I'm going to say post office, okay, and we'll just call this, push PO1, okay, all right. And then we'll just keep that. And it says, okay, great, where do you want to put it? I'll just put it off of data. And he says, okay, now what is the role of this? And I apologize, these fonts don't look very good because of the screen sharing. They usually look a little bit better. I know they're kind of slim looking here. But anyways, I'd say, so this is a collector. And he says, oh, okay, great. So, so we're pressing enter. Okay, all right. So he says, okay, great. What's the IP address of the reload server? I'm just going to cheat here real quick and look at my prior collector that I created. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go there, and I'm going to go here. Quick aside, I'll just show you what happened. You notice that we kicked off a backup, right? And then that's completed, right? That just finished. And then now it tickled this guy, and this guy's now doing the backup. And then where's he doing it? He's sending it. He's still performing it. And then when he's finished performing it, he's going to send it over to Provo first. Okay. Let's just see where it is in the process. Okay, he's still getting the databases and stuff. But when he does so, he'll then send it over here to this server, and then when he's done with that, he'll send it over here to this server. What's really cool about these collectors is if one of these servers was down, he'd just go, oh, okay, fine, that guy's down, and he just moves on to the next one. So it's not like, like a daisy chain. Gee, the one guy's down, that breaks everything. It's redundant and understands that kind of a scenario. So that's pretty handy. And in fact, I'm still waiting for this to go through. So we'll flip back gears back over here. Okay, so he says, what's the IP address? And like I said, I just need to grab that from here. Okay, and I'm going to say, because this is where I'm going to replicate it to, I'm just going to do another one. So I'm going to go there. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to type in 69.160.74.84. Okay, all right. And he says, okay, great. And now, generally, you're going to get a prompt. You're going to get a prompt for it to exchange keys with the reload server. Okay, so it's got to send exchange keys, and so it'll drop to kind of like to a console prompt, and you're going to be asked yes or no. You'll type in yes, and then you'll type in the password for the reload server, and then bink, it drops you back into this dialog. Okay, and so this is the port that it'll get a hold of. It'll transmit vis-a-vis rsync this data. And then it says, okay, so where is the data over on the reload server? Okay, all right. So I'm going to say reload beg to PO. Okay, so he says, okay. And he says, where's the local post office? Now, again, if this were a post office, I'd go out to wherever the post office is, say like media, NSS, whatever it is. But this is a little different scenario. In this scenario, we're actually pulling the data from an existing profile, right? So I'm going to do connect current. Okay, all right. So there we go. It says, okay, all right, now I need to go through my little test routine and make sure everything works, okay? And so he's going to go through this routine, and this is pretty standard stuff, and then he's just basically going to test that he can actually, okay, I obviously typed in something incorrect. 691607484. And so rather than spending my time on troubleshooting right in front of you, this I've obviously the demo gods. I did not do my. Okay, well, I didn't do my obeisance to them, so I apologize. But anyways, once it works, then these. Oh gee, I wonder if that server. That's up. Okay. Interesting. Maybe it's my connection between Montreal and Provo right now, because you can see this guy's trying to test the connection, and he can't either. Let's test this connection. There you go. Okay, so you see, so obviously there's some kind of a problem in our connection from Montreal to Provo, because you can see it's sitting here. It'll time out after a while, but that didn't go through. But this is Montreal to Montreal, and that's working just fine. Okay, so perfect scenario. You can see that it's kind of neat that we can get redundancy and like this is failing, but okay, fine. It's probably just a temporary burp in the network, but it could move on to this server just fine. So we won't proceed with that part of the demonstration, but you get the idea. And like I said, there's just something wrong in our network right now. So now we've shown you creating a collector. Our time is about up, but I want to see if there's questions. But before I do so, just say that you can set up collectors for both domains and post offices. You can push the data. See where it says GWAVA Cloud Server? That doesn't have to be over to GWAVA's Cloud. That could be your partner. Heck, it could be you putting a computer in your basement, or whatever it be. But that's a very flexible design. Okay, there's more. When you go to what's new, there's documentation on all of these things, and then what's also slick is when you go to the tools menu, there's an option for post office collector, and that brings up documentation, and then you can click on online collector documentation. And so as we run into issues and so forth, we update this KB with explanations of what it is that people need or how to troubleshoot things. So I'm going to pause there, and I apologize for a few problems that we have, but that always makes it more exciting, right? Okay, Hugh.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Tay. Great information.
Yep.
We do have a few questions to get through. And once again, if you do have a question, everyone on the call, if you want to put that through in the chat or the Q&A, we'll be sure to hit that. The first one is going back to when we were talking about the license keys. So if we have a 4 key, will it work with 5?
Yeah, good question. So it will for 30 days. So you'll upgrade, boom, the 4 key will work. When I say key, I mean the PIM file, okay? So maybe I don't know what the terminology, I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, but so what's good is the license key that you have from GWAVA. So let's say you renewed. Let's just say back in July. Okay, the license key that they gave you, you can still use that same license key. Go to licenses.guava.com, and when you go there, let's go here. I'll just go here to. First off, I want to show you this real quick. While something's being transmitted to the server, you see this blinking green and blue. So just FYI. Okay, so I'm going to go here to licenses. licenses.guava.com. Okay, and when I go there, you're going to see an option for Reload 5. Okay, so you'll select Reload 5. You'll put in exactly the same validation key that you had before, okay, that you got back in July, and then you'll fill out the stuff and download the PIM, and it'll be a 5 license key. All right, so it still works but you just have to download it. Okay, like I said, I give you a 30-day grace period. I just gen a key and do that on the fly when you install it. But you need to get one after 30 days or before 30 days is up. Sorry.
Great.
Good question.
The next one is when will the Reload 5 manuals be available?
Yeah, so that's just something where someone's got to update on the website, so I apologize. But what's good is when you go, what you could do if you wanted to go to a manual, if you already have Reload 5, you just go to Help here, and you click on Documentation, right? And you click on Written Documentation, and there's your PDF, and bink, sorry, there we go. There's your Reload 5 documentation, and there's quite a bit of detail on the collectors and so forth, and so I'd recommend that's probably the best source for that. I've tried to do a really good job of explaining collectors and the scenarios under which you'd use them. So good question. Go ahead, Q.
Great. Looks like we have a few more here.
Yep.
Let's see. Will the collector run from an OES cluster?
Yeah, I believe so. Now, okay, I'll admit that's like the one thing I haven't tested because I don't have any OES clusters here. So if you want to contact me, tk@guava.com. So that's really easy, just tk@guava.com. If you want to contact me, just send me an email, and I'll work with you on what it is that we need to do. We certainly want to try and accommodate that if we possibly can. So I don't see any problems with that idea.
Perfect. One other thing, too, back to the Reload 5 manuals question. Just as a side note, there's the Reload documentation on the website, and the website has been updated with all the Reload 5 information.
Good. Okay. Good to know.
And then, okay, the next few we have, will Reload for Retain be able to back up exchange mail data that is stored in Retain?
Absolutely. Yep. It'll back up. Your Retain system, be it on Linux, be it on Windows, and backs it all up to the Reload server. So, yep, that's all backed up.
And it would also do basically anything in Retain, right? So the social media and mobile messages, as long as it's in Retain, the Reload for Retain would back it up, right?
Exactly. Yeah, correct. I don't want to get too much into Reload for Retain, but the primary reason that I think you'll really like Reload for Retain is your backups. I'll just give an example. We've got an outfit that we're working with right now. Their backups take 40 hours every time they back up Retain, and we think we can get our backups down to an hour using Reload for Retain because it uses a very different approach than all other backup software, and so, but that's for another webinar.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just to follow up, and we may not have an answer to this yet, but do we know availability for Reload for Retain?
We're slated for next year. January is the one we're slated for, but I don't want to steal the thunder from marketing on that.
Yeah, we'll let you guys know. There'll be announcements coming soon. Let's see. Is there any kind of compression on backups to tape? What can I back up to, Nass or only tape?
Yeah, good question. So there isn't, and here's why. Okay, I've done a lot of testing with this. Years ago I did, and compression doesn't help in any manner because the GroupWise data is already compressed. Now that's not entirely true. The databases aren't necessarily compressed, but the blobs are, and that's 90% of your data. And so there's not really an advantage to compression, so I haven't built that in. That's not even entirely true either. If you do the tar splitting, then I have built that in. Because I put them into a tar GZ, okay, which is compressed. So if you go the tar splitting route, then you do get, the compression, but I don't know that it really does you. I don't know that you're really going to get all that much value. It was just a good way for me to approach the problem with tar.gz files and the script that I wrote to build them back up.
Oh, and then are backups only to tape or to other devices like Nass?
So, backups, reload backups are to the disk of the reload server. Okay, that's your primary location. And then tar files, you can put them to a tar file, or what's really slick is, maybe this is what you're after, is you can go in here and you can go to tape, okay, and then see the location. You can indicate where you want it put, okay. And then what's really cool is you can tell it to do a pre or a post command. Oops, I turned that off a while back. I should turn that back on. But anyways, what that does is let's say you want to mount a NAS. You could make a little script that mounts the NAS, at will, and then it runs that script. It'll execute that script, and then when it executes the script, then the location's available, and then you just say, hey, it's over here on data, or mount, NAS or something like that. And so yeah, you can have it right to a NAS vis-a-vis this method. And if you needed some more assistance on that, we'd be happy to help you. Just call into support. So I hope that answers your question.
Great. That looks like all the questions we have for now. Thanks, Tate, for the information. Great information presented, and thanks everyone for your questions and participation in this webinar. Like I said earlier in the webinar, this has been recorded, so look for that recording link as well coming up soon.
And also, if you have any questions that we were not able to address in this webinar, feel free to contact either myself. You can reach me at qmangus@guava.com or Tay at tkratzer@guava.com, and we'll be happy to follow up with you and answer any questions that we may not have addressed. Plus, if you are interested in Reload and you currently are not using it, feel free to learn more about it at www.guava.com. And you can always email us as well for any other questions, or if you'd like a quote on the solution, at questions@guava.com. Thanks again, everyone, for your time, and we hope to see you soon.